like where this is going. Stop! Stop!
After being so impressed with the survival horror influence from the first Alone in the Dark game, and being so disappointed with the sequel for ditching all the horror aesthetics, I did not have faith going through the final entry of the trilogy, because the original creator was still not involved with this IP, and it was still using the same main character from the previous games, which means that it was gonna be another action game just like Alone in the Dark 2. However, despite my feelings for that game, I still gave this game a shot just to see if they actually took the feedback from their bad reception or if they made the exact same mistakes. So, after a long break that should not have happened in the first place, I am finally back to talking about horror games.
Alas, I am returned to be granted audience once more.
And discuss the final entry in the horror game trilogy from the 90s, Alone in the Dark 3, released in 1995. To give you a small reminder, I don't just review horror games, but I also do research and share some development history with my viewers, because there might be some information that you probably didn't know about your favorite horror games, and I had so much fun doing that. Unfortunately, just like in my previous review, this game does not have any background information shared on the internet. I tried to learn how the game was developed, or if there were any ideas that ended up in the cutting room, but no such luck. Let's just jump right into the game. Did Alone in the Dark 3 learn something from its predecessors? Or is it another Hollywood-inspired action game with broken gameplay like this one? Well, let the games begin. The game takes place 8 months after the events of the second game, and it starts with a frame of Edward Carnby, the protagonist from the first 2 games, sitting in his office minding his own business. All of a sudden, his light goes out, he gets a call from someone, and we actually get dialogue voices between the 2 characters.
Carnby.
Greg Saunders, Hill Century.
Wait, Greg Saunders? Is he related to Grace Saunders? Is he like her father or something?
Cut it short, Greg. I've got problems.
You're onto a new case?
No, not really, no. I'm alone in the dark.
Thanks for reminding me of the title of the game, Carnby. So Carnby gets a call from Greg, and he tells him to investigate the disappearance of a filming crew in a ghost town called Slaughter Gulch. Among the disappeared crew is none other than Emily Harwood. Yes, the second protagonist from the first game is actually back for this one, since she was completely absent in the second game. Unfortunately for Emily fans, as you already figured it out, she is the damsel in distress in this new investigating case for Carnby. She is not a playable character this time around. Anyways, before we go any further, let me just point out that this is the very first game in the series that features difficulty options. You can either increase or decrease the HP of your character or the enemies themselves. This is a good thing, because if you hated playing through Alone in the Dark 2, don't worry, this game is much more forgiving. So props to that. Speaking of props, another good thing I can say right now is that when you actually start a new game, the game actually jumps straight into gameplay. No cutscenes or scripted scenarios like in the previous games. I miss when video games actually did something like this. So on the next day, Carnby reaches the ghost town and he meets up with some zombie cowboys. This is the trilogy in a nutshell. We went from a haunted mansion with zombies to a place filled with pirates and mobsters, and now we are facing cowboys and outlaws in an abandoned town. In some ways, I can appreciate this for trying something new to separate the games from each other's identities. However, with that being said, this game did not do any justice for being a sequel to a very influential horror title, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So Carnby confronts these cowboys and outlaws, they ignite an explosion on the bridge where Carnby is standing, and somehow he survives that. This has to be one of the first instances of plot armor being used in gaming. Now this is where the true horror begins. We are in downtown Slaughter Gulch, and for some reason, the devs gave us this background music with a very irritating arc spring sound.
Because there isn't much story going on throughout this game, let's talk about the gameplay in a short summary.
So Alone in the Dark 3 plays just like the second game. It's linear and it uses the same engine from the first game. Thankfully, however, in this game, the enemy placements here are minimal, and there are no longer any places where you get overwhelmed by a group of these bastards. You do still encounter enemies with guns, but they no longer use stunning guns, and they aren't very annoying to deal with. One really strange thing about the enemies of this game is that when you kill them, they turn into black cats with red eyes and just vanish. One thing I forgot to mention in my previous review is that Alone in the Dark 2 did not have an open search ability, which you use to examine places and furniture for certain items and puzzle pieces. And guess what? They brought it back in the third game, which means that you have a lot of puzzles to solve. Speaking of which, this is where the fun begins. Just like the first game, the puzzles are actually a big part of the gameplay in this one. But the question is, are they good?
Hell to the fucking no!
Alone in the Dark 3 has some of the worst puzzle designs I've ever approached in a horror game, because the game doesn't give you actual hints or visual details of what you need to do to progress through the story. Let's go through a few examples, shall we? The first building you go through is this particular bar, and I was already stuck here for a while because I didn't have any clues of what to do. I then looked up for a guide and found out that you have to pull the horn from this specific skull to open a trapdoor. I now learned that the hint for this puzzle was hidden in this film that you can view from this piano. But even so, the game did not do a good job at making this skull very obvious. It just doesn't look like it's interactive because it blends too well with the 2D pre-rendered environment. The next puzzle that really pissed me off is this door on the rooftop from the police station. It's not just a door, it's the type that opens by elevating upwards. How do you think you unlock this door? Do you need a key, a lockpick, a keycard, or an explosion? The answer is neither, because the answer is to actually shoot the door with a rifle!
I'm sorry?
Excuse me, what kind of sense is this solution supposed to make? This will be the last thing I will think when I approach locked doors, especially of this type. I did not find any hints for such thing. The last puzzle that I have to point out for now is this very door from this town hall building. It was at this point of the game where I myself tried to solve as many puzzles as I could without any guides. And this is where I just could not think of any methods of unlocking this piece of shit. Believe me, I was stuck here for like an hour and I just couldn't take it anymore.
Once I looked up the guide for this locked door, I shit you not, I almost rage quit and wanted to uninstall this game for the worst and most nonsensical puzzle I ever had to experience since probably the piano puzzle from Silent Hill 1.
So to open this door, all you have to do is place a bullet in its keyhole and smash it with a hammer, thus breaking the lock.
That doesn't make any sense.
Fortunately for you, it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to work.
After experiencing this piece of worthless nonsense, I just gave up playing this game blindly. Puzzles don't have to be easy, but they also shouldn't be this unforgiving. Imagine playing this game back in 1995. Even the water puzzle from Resident Evil 3 wasn't this bad. I actually solved this one on my own, believe it or not. For the puzzles here, I can no longer make sense out of. But don't worry, the story isn't any different, so let's just get into it.
So you start from downtown and you have no optional areas to explore, because they are locked or guarded by these two brothers named Duke and John Elwood. You go through this bar, you enter its basement, you reach the police station, you go on the rooftop, and Cornby decides to get his way towards the second floor of the bar. After jumping through the window, Cornby sees Emily walking right in front of him, but for some reason he never calls out for her. There should be some subtitles on the screen, but they aren't. Whatever, Carnby finds Emily's journal in a room and he learns about how her incident started. To summarize the events shortly, it all started when the lead star of the film, Billy Silver, died by the hands of a ghost while shooting a film scene. Emily and her crew didn't believe it was paranormal until they viewed the footage themselves. The outlaws came to kill the whole crew and only 2 people survived. You can actually view this tape right at the start, but for some reason, after you do so, Billy's horse appears at the entrance and just walks away. While exploring the second floor of the bar, you can find a photo that shows One-Eyed Jack and Elizabeth Jarrett, the main villains from the second game. I wonder what this means, but we'll talk about that in a moment. At the end of this area, you encounter this creature which is like conjoined twins, and you just flash them to death. I don't understand their point in this story, but whatever. You end up in the underground, and the game actually had the desire to bring back one of the worst parts of the original: platforming.
Why? I can't think of anybody who enjoyed the first game and said this was my favorite part of the game. Even if you did so, you will still be disappointed.
Because this is 10 times worse, due to the fact that it's a puzzle now. You have to make specific jumps in order to unlock more platforms. And I can assure you, the iframes in this area are broken. Just look at how many times I died while recording for this review. No excuses! The platforming section in the first game had much better iframes. This area can kiss my ass.
Kiss my ass.
During this area, you meet up with this Indian guy who never says a word to you, and you just make him move by showing this particular word stick. What's the deal with this guy anyway? Well, your guess is as good as mine, because the game doesn't bother to give me any info. Same for this one, who was magically disguised as a vulture and drags me to this elevating platform with his telekinetic powers.
Did I forget to mention that this game just keeps getting weirder? We have yet to reach the best part.
Carnby is now at the town hall building. He gets ambushed by a friend of Emily's, and you are given this very hilarious dialogue.
Don't shoot! I'm Morrison, a friend of Emily's.
Why does he sound like a woman?
Not even 5 minutes later, Morrison gets killed by the zombie very easily, and Carnby just stands there doing nothing to stop it.
That was literally his entire role in the game. Meet Carnby, give him the puzzle hint, and just die. Useless!
Useless!
Before moving forward, you can find a book which mentions a very familiar name.
A man called Prext would appear to be the author of a blasphemous work entitled White Book.
Yup, this is referring to Ezekiel Prext, the main antagonist of the first game.
So now we have Elizabeth, Jack, and Prext brought into the story of Alone in the Dark 3. What does this mean exactly? Keep watching and you'll find out.
After some more bullshit that I don't care for, Carnby finds a suitcase full of money which is booby-trapped, and you need this key to disable the bomb. He then slides his way out of the building and ends up in a general store where he meets up with Tobias McCarthy, who is friendly towards you. According to my research on the lore for this game, this guy is actually a zombie, even though his skin color makes him look like a normal person. But that raises a question: why is this one particular zombie the only one who doesn't kill Carnby? That doesn't seem to matter, because all Tobias does is give you a letter, he sends you to the train station by this minecart, and he gets killed by the undead.
This game isn't just weird, it's full of lazy writing.
So in this letter from Tobias, you get a message from a guy named Jetstone.
Emily for the case and the key! Midnight at the water tank! Jed Stone!
As you have heard, he wants to make a deal to trade Emily Harwood with this suitcase full of ingots, and you have to meet him at the water tower by the train station. You reach the other side of the station, and you can come across a grave which has Carnby's name on it.
Sorry, this isn't as creepy as this objective from GTA 5.
Before you make your way towards your destination, make sure you blow up the station, because this asshole comes out of nowhere to run and steal the keys from you. You cannot do anything to kill him before he robs you. I forgot to mention, this is the same guy that you meet in Town Hall, where you find the suitcase. And unlike other enemies, this zombie doesn't kill you, but he is a shameless thief. He first steals your amulet, and now the suitcase. Make sure you save the game before you get robbed, because otherwise, you cannot progress the story any further.
Doesn't excuse bad game design.
We are now finally meeting the antagonist of the game, Jet Stone. And I'm actually not impressed, because Jet looks like a grumpy version of Abraham Lincoln.
I'm gonna disappoint all of you guys because this time I'm not gonna talk about the villain's backstory. From what I've researched, I don't find anything interesting to talk about Jet and his shenanigans. All I know is that this guy is the founder of this ghost town and he's just a criminal. The only interesting thing about him is that, be prepared for it, he is the son of Elizabeth Jarrett and Ezekiel Prext.
Say what now?
So according to the lore of this weird ass game, Elizabeth and Prext had met, they had a thing together, and they both abandoned Jet during his childhood. I can already spot holes in this information. When did Elizabeth and Prext actually meet and where? Because last time I recall, Elizabeth was a slave by her guardian and she was imprisoned at his place for many years until she killed him. She then became a prisoner on a boat until she was rescued by Jack. What the hell am I supposed to achieve from this? I don't know about you, but to me, this did not feel earned. Because unlike the villains from the previous games, Jet Stone is not interesting at all. He has very little screen time, he looks very unoriginal, and this piece of lore was just added to force that coming full circle bullshit. Jet Stone is not better than Elizabeth, Jack, and Prext. He is by far the lamest villain of this franchise. With my rant out of the way, let's just finish this boring ass narrative.
So Carmi finally confronts Jet Stone, who holds Emily hostage. He drops the suitcase with the key on the ground, and of course, being the asshole that he is, he orders the Elwood brothers to kill him anyway.
You know, part of me wishes the game just ended here, because what happens next is where the game officially, and I mean officially, jumped the shark.
So after Carmi gets killed, we get a scene with this Indian man that we saw earlier, doing some ritual stuff near a fire. Because you carry this medallion that you found at the police station, this man made a possession of Carmi's soul.
So after all the weird things that we have seen in this trilogy, like a pirate ghost, a possessed tree, and people from the 18th century being immortal, this is where they cross the line.
The man has Carmi's soul in his hands, and he turns it into a cougar. And guess what? The next chapter has you play as the fucking cougar.
I'm done, okay? I don't want to hear any excuses. This would be one of the very last things I would expect in a survival horror game. Does this game even deserve to be called that?
Nope.
Carmi gets resurrected by turning into a cougar, and this man gives you a task to fetch an eagle statuette and burn it on this campfire in order to bring your human body back to life. This is no longer survival horror, it's a fetch quest, and you have to go in a certain direction to accomplish your mission. There is no exploration or combat happening in this chapter except fighting these particular wolves, which is very underwhelming. Anyways, after this bizarre series of events, Cougar Carmi burns the eagle, and after Jet and his partner get done burning his body in his grave, Carmi's back, bitches! Getting resurrected scares this guy shitless and runs away. I do not appreciate the fact that you are empty-handed again. You don't possess your weapons anymore, and you have to use this guy's revolver from now on. Moving on, you go back to the water tower, and you encounter your own doppelganger. This is literally an undead variant of Carmi who guards the tower. It mimics your movements and actions, which means that you should not aim your gun at it. To make progress, you have to drop your weapon in front of your double, get close to him, and this is what happens.
You know what? I'm not even gonna comment on this. The jokes write themselves.
So we finally reached the final level of this game, and honestly, there isn't much to say about this underground chapter. I will say though, this puzzle area is the one that I enjoyed solving. It's very mind-thinking, full of tension, and well balanced. And then some other weird shit happens, like you drink a potion that shrinks your body, and you do this to enter a cell in order to kill this undead scientist. You confront this spider-like zombie, and you make it drink the shrink potion in order to kill it. You then encounter this headless guy that you can't kill, but you get rid of him by playing fetch with it. And finally, you go head to head against this karate enthusiast zombie.
You get the idea, let's just move on.
In this area, you can open this window to take a peek in another room, and Carnby sees Jet imprisoning Emily with some ritual possession. I wouldn't recommend doing this because Jet shoots at you and you can't avoid the first shot. When you reach the room, you finally rescue Emily from possessed imprisonment and she passes out. Carnby goes to finish his business with Jet, but before he could do that, he gets into a hallway trap with one guy after him.
Wait, why did they send this guy trapped here with Carnby if they intended to kill him with this spike door? Are they stupid or something?
Anyways, for some stupid reason, in order to wake Emily up to help Carnby escape, you have to throw this particular bottle to the metal door, instead of just, you know, knocking on the door and yelling naturally. Whatever, Emily ends up rescuing Carnby by pulling this convenient lever.
Pull the lever.
Emily.
After all the weird bullshit that we witnessed, this is the game's final nail in the coffin for its logic.
Just after Emily rescues Carnby, the next scene shows Jet putting himself in a robot suit with a fake beard identical to his own on this helmet.
What kind of sci-fi bullshit is this?
I swear to God, this game keeps flipping off its own consistency in tone and logic. Not only that, they didn't even do anything to make this interesting.
You are finally reaching the boss area, and let me just say this right now, it's garbage. You don't just fight Jet, but you also confront the Elwood brothers, who'll just keep teleporting in whichever room you are. Thankfully, you can get rid of them easily by just placing this item in front of the statue. And at last, you are against Jet alone. And he's not a good boss fight, like at all. You cannot shoot him, you cannot fight him with your fists. He shoots you with this weapon, which is a shameless ripoff of Mega Man, and his AI is unbelievably stupid. All he does is walk around the room, he never follows you in the room with the statue, and he only attacks when you are in the same room with him. Like, what the hell? Even Alone in the Dark 2, of all its faults, had a decent final boss. Hell, even the first game I could say had a boss that was serviceable. What the hell were they thinking when designing this boss fight? I can't even call it that. This is more of a puzzle. All you have to do is turn this valve, grab a glove and a knife, cut this electric cable, and just wait in the other room until Jet stupidly decides to step on my trap. He saw me make this trap, yet he fell for it.
You dumbass!
Just whatever. These snake ghosts come out of these statues to fuse with Jet, and they all vanish as he gets electrocuted. I guess his death wasn't shocking enough to them. Emily opens the door for Carnby, and the last thing you do is operate this locomotive to ride their asses out of town. The game ends with the very first time in the franchise featuring credits rolling with a scene montage while playing an epic music.
So that was Alone in the Dark 3. It tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Alone in the Dark 3 is just painfully mediocre. I wouldn't say it's a bad game because it does fix some issues that were present in the second game. It doesn't heavily emphasize on action, the enemies and their placements aren't as annoying, there are some explorable areas for you to enjoy, and you actually get to solve a lot of puzzles. Unfortunately, at the same time, it still repeats some of its mistakes. The horror aspect is very lacking, the lore of this game gets weirder and weirder as the story goes on, the AI did not get any improvements, and worst of all, the puzzle design is garbage. Most of the riddles are poorly balanced. You barely get hints of what you need to do, and some of the solutions don't even make any sense, like Hammer smashing a bullet through a keyhole. That's not how it works in real life. How many people actually finished this game before the internet became a thing? In terms of the story, there is nothing to write home about. Jetstone is a terrible villain, there are too many strange events that ruin the immersion, and bringing Emily back in this one did not add any value to the story. She literally could have just been someone else and the story would remain the same.
Overall, as a game on its own, it's fine. Maybe you'll enjoy this game if you like puzzles that are very unforgiving. However, as a prequel to a very influential horror game like Alone in the Dark, it's awful. It's better than Alone in the Dark 2, but it doesn't really say much. With all that being said, let's wrap up this classic trilogy and represent my final verdict.
If you are a fan of puzzle-based games that don't play safe with your mind, you will probably enjoy this one. However, if you are looking for a classic survival horror game in the 90s, I do not recommend this at all. You are better off looking for a much better game from that certain period and just skip this one.
Since we are still here, let's discuss the Alone in the Dark trilogy in a brief summary, shall we? As far as the trilogy goes, it's awful.
The first game was revolutionary for its birth of survival horror in the 3D world. It is outdated in a lot of ways, but it's not unplayable. I can still enjoy that game if I had to play it again. The sequel was just horrible. Instead of improving all the issues from the first game and boosting its horror influence, they just ditched all of that and decided to make an action game, using the exact same gameplay from the first game, which was never built for combat. The third game tries to make a mix between both its predecessors, but it fails miserably. We went from a new take on the horror genre to an uninspired Hollywood action-adventure bullshit.
Are you all saying that Resident Evil is the first franchise to do such thing? Well, guess what? That's no longer the case, because Alone in the Dark is the one that inspired this franchise to be both horror and action. But here's the difference. Resident Evil 5 and 6 are actually fun to play, especially 5, which I think is very underrated. Even Resident Evil 6, despite how bizarre it is, it's still a much better game than Alone in the Dark 2 and 3. I have no reasons to replay these games ever again, because they don't even do anything to add any fun value to the action genre. None. The Resident Evil trilogy is actually the opposite. It got better with each entry. This one has no excuses. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me on my review for this trilogy. I plan to cover more survival horror games in the future, and you are free to let me know in the comments what games you want me to cover up next. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Farewell.